seemingly every game, there's one of those situations where a team is faced with going for it, punting, or kicking a field goal on fourth down. And there's always either a graphic that comes up that says, analytics says, you should go for this. Or the announcer will say, well, analytics says that 82% of the time you should go for this. Where do those numbers actually come from? And
models, everybody's got a slightly different model, but you use past performance over the last few years to figure out just how often teams are going to convert. In a certain situation, those models are always keyed to the down and distance, but also the quality of the teams, right? Some of the models use a stat to figure out the quality of the teams, like ESPN's model uses their FPI. Some of the models use just the Vegas line to figure out the quality of the teams. But they all incorporate what the quality of the team is, and how often do you convert on this down and distance, and what's the likelihood that you are going to win if you convert, and what's the likelihood that you're going to win if you fail, and then what's the likelihood that you're going to win if you punt, and then they compare all those things.
So what, in your opinion, what else does a coach have to factor in? I mean, if the analytics tell him, right, hey, 84% of the time you should go for this, but maybe they don't go for it. Like, what other factors do you think they think about?
They don't say go for this 84% of the time. They say, if you go for this, you're going to win 60% of the time. And if you don't go for this, you're going to win 58% of the time. And so you have to decide. I mean, listen, people always talk about, teams have to take their players into account. First of all, they talk about you have to take account your team's strengths and weaknesses. Models already take that into account. Then they say, you have to take into account the psychology of your players. That's true in the margins, right? If you have a toss-up where it says, if you punt here, you'll win 59%. And if you go for it, you'll win 60%. And it's only a 1% difference. And you think, you know what? we're just not running against them today. This is just not a good day to do this, right? That's one thing. If the model says, if you go for it, you're going to win 65% of the time. And if you punt, you're going to win 55% of the time. Then it doesn't matter what your players think. You have to go for that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, as a fan, it's easy. It's also one of those things like, hindsight is 2020. And we as fans love to say, well, they should have done this in the moment or should have.
Coaches always say, but what if we don't? But what if we don't make it? But what if we don't get it? That's all incorporated into the model. Of course, there's a chance you're going to not make it. Like, right. If we knew you were going to make it 100% of the time, you would go 100% of the time. Like, that's not like, it's factored into the model that we know sometimes you're going to get it and sometimes you're going to fail. Here's the thing. Going for it on fourth down is a higher variance than punting or kicking a field goal. But that means more good and it means more bad. And the good tends to outweigh the bad.
I haven't looked at the statistics, but off the top of your head, is there usually a correlation with a team's willingness to go for it on fourth down and their success throughout the season or in the playoffs?
I mean, teams that go for it on fourth down win more, but there's so many things going on here that it's not like blatantly obvious, because a lot of coaches who aren't good at fourth down decision making are good at lots of other things. I mean, Mike Tomlin. Let's take Mike Tomlin, for example, right? Mike Tomlin is bad at fourth down decision making. He's great at locker room management and player motivation and things that we can't measure. So it's not like he's a bad coach. It's just there's this thing we can measure that he's bad at. But he's good at all these other things. So it's not like, Pittsburgh's going to go 2-14 every year because Mike Tomlin can't make fourth down decisions. These are all little advantages. What we're trying here to do is to get little advantages.